Jobs rocketing, stocks surging, as President Trump's promising tax cuts are coming soon. Is that what we need to get our economy booming? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagen McDowell, in for Brenda Butner. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Lee Carter and Kathy Aru. Welcome to everybody. John, look at how the market jumped on Friday when President Trump just simply said tax cuts are coming soon. You say that's the most important thing to put jobs and the economy into overdrive.
Yes, and I think that is what the market is expecting. Remember, the market was flat from November 2014 to November 2016, and you've seen this incredible run-up since then President-elect Trump was elected, and it's because of these tax cuts that are coming. The big fear is that President Trump is doing some very divisive things first, maybe the Johnson Amendment, going after a border-adjusted tax, things that he's spending his political will on. I think what he needs to do and what the market wants to see him do is especially the corporate tax, because you're going to be hard-pressed to find anybody on either side of the aisle that disagrees with the fact that if you give 20 to 30 cents back on every dollar earned to a small and medium-sized business, because you're taking that business from the pass-through income, putting it in the corporate tax size, that this is not going to be great for the economy, not good for the economy. This is going to be great because these small businesses, for the first time, are going to have some breathing room. They'll have capital investment money. They'll also be able to hire employees. This is a direct stimulus, and this is something that he can get passed very easily for both sides of the aisle.
Gary B., the confidence is there, not just among individuals, but you saw it in that jobs report for last month with big boom in retail jobs, construction jobs, even manufacturing ticking up. But you've got to follow through with that and lower taxes. That's what business owners and operators are expecting.
And the individual, Dagen. Look, I disagree with one thing that John said. I agree with another. John said that some of the things he's been doing are controversial. I think they're controversial only to the left. To the people that voted for him, he's doing everything he promised. He's protecting our borders. He's addressing illegal immigration. He's cutting the size of the government. As you point out, and I think John is right, now what we need is that other shoe, the fourth or fifth shoe, if you will, and that's cutting taxes. I think that John addressed the companies and the small businesses. For the individual out there, I think feel that they've been mired in this slog for the last 8 years. They've seen no wage growth. We know what labor force participation has been dropping. The only reason unemployment rate has been growing is because it has been crappy part-time jobs or unpaid internships. So people need more money in their pocket. They know that every dollar they send to Washington, D.C., Dagen, is pretty much wasted. You know, percentage of government expenditures, a percentage of GDP is now almost 20%. My gosh, even back in the 30s during the height of the recession, it was less than 10%. Let the people keep their money. Simplify the tax code. And as John points out, cut the marginal rates, and you are going to really have a supercharged economy.
Jonas, the economy needs it. It wasn't even growing at 2% at the end of last year. The unemployment rate ticked up because more people are coming back into the workforce, and the jobs still aren't there for them.
Need and want are strong. I don't know if we need anything. I mean, the economy's not that bad right now. The stock market's hot. It's not all expectations of a tax cut. You know, we can't really afford a huge net tax cut at this point. We could certainly use and need tax reform, and it would take a real wrecking ball to do that, and that's basically what Donald Trump is, and he has more power right now than a lot of presidents have had, and this is your opportunity to fix the mess. But to John's point, you don't want to get bogged down in stuff. Yeah, the left and the right, but the bottom line is a lot of investors are worried about some of these policies because in the past, nationalist policies are not good for the stock market or the economy. Obviously, tax improvements are for a clean benefit to investors, consumers, et cetera. But some of this other stuff could go either way if it's mismanaged. So you don't want to get bogged down in stuff. Don't start doing health care reform because that ain't fixable. Do the taxes first and bang it out before you get bogged down.
The tax cuts, individuals, Lee, want this. They want to keep more of their money.
There's no question. It's a lot of what got him elected was, I'm going to promise to cut your cut taxes, give you jobs, the economy's going to get going again. It's what people want. It's what people voted for him. And I think that we've seen he is a man of action. He has had 18 executive orders and presidential memos in 14 days. This is like whiplash we're all having trying to keep up with him. And I think that there's no question. He said he's going to do it. He's going to do it. Is it going to be in an executive order in the first 14 days? No. This is something that he can work with Congress on and show that he can work with Congress on. It's something we can all agree on. I think we're going to see it happen. It's something that's not controversial. It's something that people want. And we're even seeing Samsung. We're seeing other companies saying we're going to bring jobs to America because of the promise of tax cuts. The pharmaceutical industry just met with him. He's talked about tax cuts, job growth in that industry. This is something that's important not just to voters, but also to companies wanting to bring more jobs to this country.
And a complicated tax code, Kathy, and I know you're not going to argue with me, right. 75,000 pages, it actually crushes the little guy. So tax cuts and tax reform in the next few months, huge boost for the economy.
Well, fantastic. First, we have to say thank you, Obama, for this economy, because Trump did not inherit an economy that Obama had inherited. We're facing that Great Recession, and we did not hit it. So thank you, Obama, for this economy right now. And the tax cuts, fabulous. We want them. We want tax reform. We want Paul Ryan's tax reform to come through. Everybody's hoping for that. So I think everyone agrees. But is Trump going to do it? Because Trump has started so many other fires that he has to put out. Is he going to be able to do the tax reform?
Gary B., was that you moaning and groaning?
First of all, Kathy, welcome to the show. But if I hear this thank Obama for the economy thing, yes, we're so thankful that Hillary Clinton couldn't even beat Donald Trump. He lost seats in state and local. He decimated basically the Democratic Party. Yes, thank Obama for making the Republican Party a lot more relevant. But the other point is, I want to get back to Jonas's point, because this is a mentality. He's saying we can't afford these tax cuts. My gosh, in other times when we've actually cut taxes, the revenues to the government have increased. If we made it simple and we lowered the marginal rates, people like Jonas out there will look for less tax loopholes and say, oh my gosh, I don't have to try to hide this money. I can afford to pay this. If it's simple, if it's direct, if it's low, you will see the revenues not drop off. I think it's perfect for the economy. And again, yes, I thank Obama for moving out of the way and letting Donald Trump become president.
Jonas, do you want to respond?
Yeah. Every major tax cut have had in the past has been followed up by some little sneaky tax increases, because at the end of the day, politicians don't want to take away other things people want. And unfortunately, we're hearing a lot of that out of the top guest here is what people want. Those things people want are why taxes have to go back up, because they won't cut Medicare and Social Security.
You have to address both sides. I'll give you that. You have to address the spending side.
If you want low taxes, you can't want all this other stuff, because it can't both happen. Only a populist would tell you that, and that leads to financial ruin.
But, John, we are seeing Donald Trump go after regulations. For every $1 in new regulations, these agencies in Washington are going to have to cut $2. The economy would be 25% bigger if we had not had regulations, if there had been no new regulations since the 1980s.
That's right. We saw a regulation reform a little bit in 1996 with the Small Business Fairness Act under President Clinton, which did a lot to spur that economy in the late 1990s. But since then, we have just seen 20 years of regulation tacked upon regulation, and that is huge to the small and medium-sized business who can't afford to deal with all the compliance issues. To Jonas's point, though, about we need more revenue. Well, look, when President Obama took over, we're at $2.1 trillion in revenue taken into the government coffers. It was $3.2 trillion his last year in office. It was a 50% raise in revenue. It's at 19% GDP, which is about all the nation can handle right now. They're still running a $500 billion deficit. Because these morons can't balance a budget, that doesn't mean we should give them more money. Giving more money back to these small businesses is how you spur this economy.
I make better decisions with my money than the people in Washington, and I think everybody can agree with that. Thanks, guys. Cavuto on Business about 20 minutes from now. Neil, what have you got?
Hey, Dagan, President Trump using the power of the White House to get things done, from signing executive orders to meeting business leaders. Is leveraging where he's living the best way to get down to business? Plus, did the White House just put public unions on notice? We're on it at the bottom of the hour.
Thanks, Neil. We cannot wait. But up here first, Iran test firing a ballistic missile, then Iranian-backed rebels attacking a Saudi ship. Now, President Trump is slapping new sanctions on Iran. But will it work? We debate, you decide. Next. The U.S. hitting Iran with new sanctions after it test-fired a ballistic missile. And Iranian-backed rebels in Yemen attacked a Saudi ship. Now, the USS Cole destroyer patrolling off the coast of Yemen. Gary B., you say it is about time we got serious with Iran.
Absolutely. It's way past time. Look, since 2015, they've fired 12 ballistic missiles. Now, not according to us have they violated anything, but according to the United Nations Security Council, you know how many they were allowed to fire? 0. So is it time to get tough? Absolutely. Donald Trump is the man to get tough. The question is, do sanctions work? That's a simple one. What brought Iran to the table last time? It was the economic export financial sanctions we put on them, along with 5 other countries. Do they work? Yes. Should we do them? Absolutely.
Lee, because the Obama administration was so worried about getting the nuclear deal done and preserving it, they did nothing about these ballistic missile firings by Iran. Ones, by the way, on the side of them are written in Farsi, Hebrew, and English: death to America, death to Israel.
It is amazing that we have spent so much time trying to be kind to this country. It has run amok, and I think people voted on this election a lot about national security, about saying that we need to be tougher on these countries. Things have not gotten better over the last 8 years in relations in the Middle East. They have not. In fact, they've gotten worse. We're having things like this happen. People are upset. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit there and mamby-pamby about it? I think that the nation is ready for strength here. They want to see strength, and they want us to see use our leverage. It's a very Donald Trump concept, using leverage. He talks about it in The Art of the Deal, and I think he's doing it here.
John, what do you say?
I agree with Gary B. About the fact that we need to do something with Iran. The problem is the UN Security Resolution of 2015 that was signed in Vienna is a bit ambiguous in some of the language. And so they're trying to get around a loophole of firing ballistic missiles, saying that they have not violated the treaty. So when you're putting sanctions on these guys, they have not done anything to violate the nuclear agreement. So you can't go after them for that. You go after missile supply entities and countries which typically don't deal with the United States anyway. So these sanctions pretty much are meaningless. Unfortunately, we're stuck with a nuclear deal, and John Kerry has become the modern-day Neville Chamberlain.
Yeah, but at least, Kathy, that the Trump administration is sending a message to Iran that the United States takes the missile firings very seriously, despite the fact that the Obama administration was literally handing over billions of dollars in cash that Iran is using to fund terrorism.
Well, on his watch, we did not have any terrorist attack from Iran, and on his watch, we did not have nuclear proliferation from Iran. So the treaty that he did have with Iran, it holds, and Donald Trump says he's going to keep that in place, the policy in place, and the sanctions are probably something that Obama would have done. But I don't think Obama would have sent out a tweet and played with fire with Iran. This is not a joke, and the way Donald Trump tweets is very scary, and most Americans don't like these tweets.
It's his way. There's no evidence of that, Lee. We can talk about that, whether Americans like him or not. You know what? Tweeting got him elected. Period. But here's what Donald Trump said. Trump tweeted, "Iran is playing with fire. They don't appreciate how kind President Obama was to them. Not me." Jonas, to that point, the Obama administration did nothing about these ballistic missile tests, period. Instead, pallets of cash to Iran used to fund terrorism around the globe, whether it's the Assad regime or Hezbollah.
Well, this country's been under sanctions basically since 1979 off and on. So I don't know, you want to describe that as kind. It's a broke economy that can't refine gasoline because of all these sanctions. That all said, you know, you were talking to former Ambassador John Bolton very recently, I believe, and as he's always said, sanctions don't work by themselves. They might get you to a negotiating table, but all they're going to do, now it's my opinion, are going to impoverish a country, which may or may is not going to lead to regime change. So what do you define as work? If you want to stop nuclear proliferation, that is a whole nother ball of wax that isn't going to be solved by tariffs and banning stuff. That is going to require a serious harsh stance with a threat of nuclear attack. Unfortunately, when we first had our first nuclear weapon, we shouldn't let anybody get nuclear weapons. We should have drawn the line then. Then Russia got it soon thereafter. At this point, the best we could do is, now that Russia's sort of our new friend, is say, look, only us two can have these. Every other country, no nuclear weapons, including the UK, who just accidentally launched a missile off the coast of Florida. These things are dangerous, and this will always come back, and pushing it off 10 years is not a solution.
Gary B., but final word to you. Sending a message is critical. Iran has violated the nuclear agreement by producing excess heavy water, which is potentially used in the making of nuclear weapons. Missile firings, the Obama administration did nothing. Finally, at least someone is talking tough.
Exactly. Look, Dagan, I don't know if anyone here on this panel has ever faced a bully, but how you face bullies, and Iran is a bully, it's not so much do the sanctions work and, would Obama have done this? It's the point of when a bully throws the first punch, you got to throw a punch back and not let them push you around. And that's what Iran is doing. Whether they can get through a loophole or not on these ballistic missiles, you have to throw a punch, and that's what Trump is doing.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Gary. Lawmakers reversing one of President Obama's green regulations that took effect right before he left the White House. It limited the way coal companies can get rid of waste. Lee, you say scrapping it could help lower our energy bills.
There's no question that reducing some of these regulations and the burdens on these companies can grow the industry and can cut costs for all of us. And I think that it's something that's really important. It's something that Trump is looking at across the board. He promised the pharmaceutical industry this week that he was going to do it. He talked about the cost of putting a drug to market has gone up 10 times in 10 years. It's over, and he said, I promise I'm going to give you relief so that you can reduce costs and that you can do better for your customers. And it's the same thing here.
Gary B., lower energy bills.
Look, I appreciate the gesture that Trump's doing, but it's not coming back. Natural gas has won this war. That's not my opinion. I want to read you a quick quote. The coal industry cannot be brought back to what it was. Who said that? Robert Murray, the CEO of Murray Energy Corp. They're the nation's largest coal producer. If he doesn't think it can't come back, I don't either.
Kathy?
Mitch McConnell from Kentucky wasn't even happy with this. He said, we didn't ask for this. We didn't ask for the deregulation. And as a matter of fact, the regulation of the coal industry actually gives more jobs in Kentucky. So Mitch McConnell wasn't happy with this. I can't see why anyone else would be.
Jonas.
Well, there's going to be more jobs cleaning streams up. This regulation wasn't added to lower energy costs. It was to keep streams clean. You could remove all the regulations on a car, and you're going to lower the price of a car without catalytic converters and airbags and all this garbage they put in there. But the bottom line, are we better off as a society? And that's what it really boils down to. Is this regulation, which is costly to the coal industry, better than the alternative, which is polluted streams? That's really the plus or minus for all these regulations you got to look at. And there's a lot of regulations that probably need to go. That doesn't mean this
want to get rid of
because
this.
it lowers electricity.
Mitch McConnell said this was a job killer, and he wanted to get rid of this rule.
But in the coal industry, if you go, they got a lot of coal jobs in China. Meanwhile, you got to wear a mask when you walk around because they burn so much coal. It's not a good thing.
John, lower energy bills?
No, Gary B. is right. What's killing the coal industry right now is clean natural gas that is cheaper than coal. And look, I agree with cutting regulations. I don't agree with cutting this regulation. You're talking about where you can dump your waste and can it get into our streams and rivers. To me, I'm not sure why they went after this regulation. It seems like it's just red meat to the base.
John, that'll be the final word. A special thanks to Lee and Kathy for joining us. It's not you, it's me. Nordstrom telling Ivanka Trump it's dumping her clothing line. Why someone here says that could help your bottom line. They'll explain next. Predictions, Gary B. Go.
Dagan, a great growth industry, weddings. They're now the cost at an all-time high, over $35,000. That's nutty. But you know what's not nutty? A stock that's going to double in the next 3 years, Bed Bath & Beyond, where people get their gifts.
Bull or bear, Joe?
Bear.
John, your prediction?
My Cowboys aren't in the Super Bowl, but Tom Brady could have a record fifth straight winning Super Bowl. He sponsors Under Armour. I think the stock's up 20% in a year. I do own it.
Gary, bull or bear?
I am bearish on it.
Jonas, prediction?
The poorly thought out boycott of classy Ivanka Trump might backfire and help Dillard stock up 15% a year because they still sell the stuff even though Nordstrom doesn't.
John?
Amazon effect, bear.
Thank you.
All right. Well, look who is leveraging where he is living. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you. I'm Neil Cavuto. President Donald Trump using every inch of the White House to get down to business, from meeting business leaders in the Roosevelt Room and in the State Dining Room to signing orders in the Oval Office to rolling out his Supreme Court pick in the East Room. You get a sense of that house? He does too, and he hopes it wows you. Even giving the press a sneak peek at his own Air Force One. If this isn't how to get stuff done, then what is? It is meant to wow. It's also meant to impress. And it is also meant to get folks' attention. Charles Payne, Jerry Willis, Adam Lashinsky, and Gary Kaltbaum. Charlie Gasparino, Ben Stein, and Kennedy. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? They meet at a bar. No, exactly. They'll be joining us next week. All right, Charles Payne, to you first. And making sure you really leverage that real estate.
And another superlative, I guess you can call it that, would be to intimidate as well, because that house does that as well. Listen, we saw union leaders walk out of there and say, man, we've never were invited. We felt the awe of it. We felt the presence of it. You see business leaders saying the same thing. And it does get things done. I think that having the cameras there, having the white glare of those lights and the world looking at you with the highest position in the world, it works. It's been working out very well. We saw the most recent evidence of that this week with Lockheed Martin officially saying, yeah, we're going to bring down the price of those planes. Their CEO has made that trek more than once.
Yeah, and there's nothing as intimidating or as impressive as going to the White House, and whether you like the occupant or not. And that's one thing that's coming through loud and clear. A lot of the folks who visit are kind of wowed.
Oh, well, you can't help but be there. I mean, look, I've been to the Oval Office. You just want to agree. You're just predisposed to say yes.
I like to take stuff. I just say, because the president later, Secret Service says, what happened to the suitcase? Where'd it go? Just for that. Right, yeah. Take stuff. Gary Kaltbaum, I mean, obviously part of the strategy here is to remind people who's in charge, but also to invite them in to this new world order, and to help the public as well see him in that light. Does it work?
Oh, heck yeah. Look, politics is about marketing and sales, and if anybody knows about marketing and sales, it's Donald Trump. And something that Charles said is very important. You feel great whether you are on his enemy list or his favorite list. You feel great when you're in the White House, and you now feel part of a team, and that's what Trump's trying to do. I was amazed when the people from the union are saying, oh, we like what we have to say. That is part of this whole marketing routine that he's going through, and I think it works and works well.
There's kind of traditional things presidents do. They sign executive order and memoranda and executive actions. Frankly, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the difference is between any of the above. I do know that what makes this president different, Adam Lashinsky, is that he is doing it in like a different way. Not that you see any of this stuff and hear about it was signed, but you actually see the signing and explains what he's doing. It's sort of like the storybook hour, and explaining what he's doing. Is there value in that, or could that boomerang on him?
Well, first of all, of course, there's a value to it, and if you go to the White House and you're not awed by the experience, then you're not a normal person and probably not a patriotic American. But yes, Neil, it could boomerang. The president thinks of things like they are a reality television show because that's what he knows. So having the Supreme Court nominee come out from behind a curtain, I mean, it's fine. It's harmless. But yes, he could take it too far. I could easily see that, and it wouldn't look good if he does take it too far.
Now, I know you weren't even born, but did you say the same when John Kennedy was able to utilize the majesty of his office for press conferences and the like, or Ronald Reagan was the first to do so many outside in the Rose Garden, or do you just pick and choose?
Neil, I agree. I won't say a bad word about using the White House and the majesty of the presidency for full effect. It's great.
No.
All presidents do it. He does it in his own unique way.
He's always a gentleman. Do you notice that, Charles? Always a gentleman about it. Well, Charles, now the thing is, it's part of just letting folks know he's in charge. No one doubts that. But it's also the groups with whom he's met. And again, it includes everyone, as Jerry's saying, from the union guys to the pharmaceutical guys to the Wall Street guys. Some groups that have never had a chance, certainly with the prior president, to be sort of wined and dined and courted the way they are.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's so amazing. It's the most eclectic list sometimes of, one day we're going to, talk about people in the black community, Black History Month, and then we'll have, people from this area and that area. But what I think is interesting, and I thought about it as Adam was speaking, you juxtapose how often we saw President Obama using the White House And he did it for things he thought was really important, like signing Obamacare, and it was a big spectacle.
Right.
So if that's when you use it, then if the new president, President Trump, is using it every day, essentially he's saying, I think all of these issues are as important. I think all of these constituents are as important. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's what this election was all about. Everybody and everyone's thoughts and
But can you be spread too thin? Can you be all over the map?
Well, I do think he seems most comfortable with other business leaders,
Absolutely.
right? You know, there's a real give and take. Those business leaders come out practically with pom-poms at the cameras, jumping up and down. They're very excited, right? But with some other groups, he seems a little more stiff. But I have to tell you, seeing him open up the doors to the White House, it's really inspiring.
You know, Gary Calpon, one of the things they were saying when we talk about all the various groups he's met with, and keep in mind he's been there in about 2 weeks, is that it could lead to a flurry of confusion as well when you're meeting with so many disparate groups and getting so many different opinions concurrently, and it's all on live TV, and you're explaining all these executive actions, some of which you have to dial back yourself, like a travel order, etc., that you might rue the day you were so open and so leveraging this big old house to sell what you're doing.
That's where experience better come in, and that's where the people that speak for him had better do a good job. There has been a lot of confusion in recent days. You can see it in markets where one day we're hearing they're not doing anything financials, and then the next day they are, and all the financial stocks go higher. They've got to get away from the confusion and get things more in order. If they do that, things will be just fine.
You know, Adam, one thing I'm not surprised at, maybe I should be, the words of a president matter. And so when he was saying on Friday, you know, I haven't forgotten about tax cuts, I haven't forgotten about moving quickly on this healthcare reform and replace, I'm paraphrasing here, the markets pounced certainly on the tax cut part of it and took a good day and made it better. But that matters. In any of these confusing environments and mixed signals, that stuff matters, doesn't it?
Of course it matters, and you brought up Ronald Reagan before, and I think Donald Trump's biggest challenge is that, look, he's a very good communicator. I don't know if he's as good a communicator as Ronald Reagan was. Ronald Reagan was relentlessly positive, and that helped him. He was also methodical. He did not fire from the hip. He practiced what he was going to say because these messages were important. Donald Trump already has gotten himself in trouble, as you pointed out, by just sort of acting. And this is just not the job where you want to act quickly necessarily. And I think he's going to learn that the hard way, and I hope it works out okay.
You were going to say?
I was going to say there's a clock ticking, and it's called the next election cycle. So you do have to get on it fast.
Really? It's just he's 2 weeks into this.
I know. No time like the present, my friend. We got to get it underway.
Gary, you were going to say?
That's true.
I'm just saying he loves his tweeting. If Ronald Reagan was alive today, I'm sure he'd be tweeting too, but a lot smarter.
I don't think Reagan would be tweeting.
I'm not so sure.
I don't know. I'm going to rob you of my Reagan impression there. All right, meantime, the mainstream media is jumping ugly on the president's tough phone call with Australia's prime minister. But is the real big deal, the really bad deal that they were discussing that was apparently news to the President of the United States? After this.
Today on Forbes on Fox, violent protesters trashing UC Berkeley, stopping a conservative from speaking on campus. President Trump suggesting he'll cut federal funds if the college can't guarantee order and freedom of speech for everybody. Should he? Plus, why some here say the president's pick for Supreme Court justice could be the best pick for businesses and workers. They'll explain at the top of the hour. We'll see you then.
When you hear about the tough phone calls I'm having, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. They're tough. We have to be tough. It's time we're going to be a little tough, folks. We're taken advantage of by every nation in the world virtually. It's not going to happen anymore.
That had kind of like a mob tone to it, didn't it? Don't worry about the tough phone calls, all right? Just ease up. Anyway, talking tough, taking a lot of heat for talking tough. President Trump defending a phone call with Australia's Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, now pushing back on a deal the Obama administration had made, promising more than 1,200 refugees in their country that they could come to our country. It was new to the president. He didn't know it, didn't like it, and he let, well, I guess Turnbull know it. Gary says that is the real outrage here. So, I think that it was a legitimate ticked off point, right?
Yeah, look, according to the media, everything Obama did was a good deal and everything Trump does is a bad deal. And the fact of the matter is this was an 11th hour deal put in his lap after the fact. And what is Trump going to do? Just like any good president, he's going to look it over and see if it's right for the country. And he obviously has a different opinion. And if you think about it, if these refugees are so good, why doesn't Australia keep them? And if this is so bad, why do we have to take them in? It's an amazing story to watch. And by the way, if this was the other way around, the media would be going crazy on the leak.
Jerry, we do know that someone had leaked this. What do you think?
Well, you see this again and again. Here's the problem. Obama, before he left, he put a lot of little surprises in for Donald Trump to find, and they were things that would be right in the face of Donald Trump's policy.
Now, we're told that this did come up and that Donald Trump had a heads up on it, but it might have been one of these security briefings that he skipped out on. I don't know. That was like one of their little jibes. But what do you make of it?
But let me give you another example, because there are probably 6 or 7 of these that came as surprises to Donald Trump and his team. One of them is signing all these people up for Obamacare at the last minute. Now, you think about this. The administration got behind that sign up, right? So what were they thinking? Are they burnishing his legacy? They're certainly not looking out for the people, because the people could have lost that coverage. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
no,
that
but I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Charles Payne.
Here's the deal. Australia's prime minister watched our elections very closely. He knew exactly where candidate Trump stood. When he cut this deal with Barack Obama, he knew he was going against the new president of the United States.
I'm told the deal came up in the discussion that prior to the phone call, the president didn't know about it.
Which president?
Our president.
President Trump.
Yeah,
right. I'm saying, though, Turnbull cut this deal with President Obama.
I understand that.
After the election.
So that's when that's when it went off the rails.
That's why Donald Trump was upset. Now, here's the thing. The fake news was that he slammed the phone and the call ended that way. Both President Trump and Turnbull both said no. It was, they had their
We
words.
both slammed the phone down together.
Exactly.
I don't know what the truth is there, but to this earlier point, Adam, about how different it's going to be if you have a phone call to President Trump and you're even a friendly leader from a friendly country, or he doesn't like something, I guess diplomatic speak is not going to be there. Now, we learn later times, sometimes decades after a presidency, that audio of phone calls come out where it gets nasty. And I've certainly heard a few of those of JFK or LBJ with foreign leaders. This we're hearing, I guess, in real time. But what do you make of it?
Well, whatever was said, we know it was bad enough that John McCain felt it was necessary to try to clear the air. And, Neil, you're a wonderful mimic. I think it's really funny when you do the mob thing or when you do the Ronald Reagan thing. I don't think it's funny when the President of the United States sort of plays down his lack of willingness to act gracefully or with tact. I think
why
it's
should
very
he?
important.
I guess what I'm telling you is, why should he?
I understand your point, and I should, because he's representing the greatest country on earth. And I think that's a huge responsibility.
But maybe part of being the greatest, and I can actually see that point, because we're so used to the other way of being with Republicans and Democrats. It's a point I'll raise with Gary Kalpom. Gary, do you think that inherent in this job is a sort of diplomatic speak and a way to carry yourself, especially with leaders of Western allies?
Look, there should be a way about you when you are discussing other leaders and other things around the country, around the world. But look, there has been a leak here, and I can promise you, there's been plenty of tough talk between President of the United States and other countries throughout the last 100 years. This is not new. My bigger point again is the media would be having fits over this leak right now and trying to investigate who did it and go after that person if it was Obama. Instead, it's Trump, and they're rejoicing about it.
Charles, I would worry then if there are other surprises that Trump is unfamiliar or genuinely kept out of the loop prior. There could be other phone calls like this, and then some.
Well, I hear where Adam is coming from, but, he said that the president represents America. Well, when someone deliberately tries to shaft Americans, why beat around the bush? Listen, Turnbull...
Because Adam is a nice guy, and there's a diplomatic way to deal with it. And Adam can't do my Tony Soprano.
But that's why, but Turnbull tried to pull a fast one.
So did Adam.
And President Trump called him out on it. Bottom line, by the way, that's the New York way, Adam. I know you guys are nicer in San Francisco, but in New York, when someone tries to shaft us, we don't play around with that.
And what you have to do, Adam, let me start, is talk a lot with your hands. And just say, hey, I'll help you later, buddy, but there's only so much I can do in a half-hour show. Government workers may not like this. The White House is talking to Wisconsin's Republican governor, Scott Walker, about how he took on public unions in his state and won. Now, a lot of folks say that he weakened their collective bargaining power to save his taxpayers big money. No matter where you stand on this, Charles, you say if we take it nationwide, it would save taxpayers everywhere a lot of money, right?
I think it would. I think there's a reason why public sector unions are hanging in there, while in the private sector they've all but disappeared. It's a honeypot. It's a self-serving money machine at the expense of taxpayers. They cut themselves these amazing deals, and they're allowed to represent themselves in a way that seems really dumb in many ways. So if they can replicate what the success that Walker had in Wisconsin, I think taxpayers would save a lot of money.
What's more, it's not just about saving money, though. The kids in Wisconsin are getting a better education. There's a better outcome because of this policy, because they're rewarding teachers who are doing a good job. So there are benefits several ways, not just one way, and I'd love to see it carried out on a bigger scale.
You don't like where this is going, though, Adam, do you?
Well, no, I don't like to see the erosion of collective bargaining. It's probably a good thing that we've had for many, many decades. I'll say I see a fascinating conflict coming, though. If President Trump tries to go after federal workers, these are a lot of people, a lot of voters. His political instincts are going to be very cautious there, I think.
There is that possibility, Gary, but obviously he's sending a signal, Scott Walker, to help do what he did there nationally. What do you think?
He's sending a signal. It's our money, and it's time we have accountability everywhere in government, including government pay. All I can tell you is that this should be something called merit pay. In my world, I get paid if I do well. If I don't do well, I get less pay. The same should go for federal workers. It's time we have some accountability, and it's good to see.
I'm a little annoyed because I just found out other anchors here are paid, and it's not going to go down well, guys. Charles Payne, the issue comes up here is, all right, the collective bargain, whatever you want to call it, then people who do not want to be part of that, let's say in public unions, still benefit from agreements that the union scored. And those unions seemingly can go back and say, that's not right, because we worked our heinies off to get the pay packages and benefit packages, whether you find them offensive or not, and these people who don't want to be part of us can take advantage and enjoy it with us.
Yeah, that's one of the remaining selling points for them. But you can also think about the damage that unions do, particularly in economically tough times when you can't hire people because somebody with union seniority is making 2 or 3 times more than they should. So it's a double-edged sword for the average worker.
Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, it's got to go somewhere because the cost for these unions is just too much for states and for the federal government.
Joe, thank you very much. Enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah, you don't really
it was
need it.
Okay.
That's fine. She's always so dignified about it. With Valentine's Day coming up, a new survey showing that most people care less about looks and more about money when picking a partner. Now our guys are picking the stocks that'll make you absolutely irresistible. Stocks that'll make your bank account more attractive.
It ain't sexy, but Mastech is in construction and it's going to make you look a lot better a year from now.
Adam.
Well, mine is equally unsexy. This is XLB. It's materials, stocks. It's about infrastructure spending.
Gary Kalpam.
Costco accelerating comp numbers. Stock broke out of range in the past week. I think it's going higher another 15% in the next 6 months to a year.
And large chunks of meat, about 50 pounds. That is sexy. All right, Costa Rica continues now with David Aslan on the Plays for Business Fox.
Rioters at UC Berkeley this week forcing Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos to cancel his speech on campus. Well, that had President Trump tweeting out if the college doesn't allow free speech for everybody, well, maybe he's going to cut off federal funds. So should he? Hi, everybody. I'm David Aslan. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Elizabeth McDonald, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, and Bruce Japsen. Steve, UC Berkeley gets $370 million a year from the federal government. That's about 55% of its research grants. Should that be in play here?
Well, David, the government's been in the coercion business against universities for decades. Just ask universities about Title IX, supposedly help women in sports, has now gone to really controlling various parts of the university. So why shouldn't universities be bastions of the First Amendment instead of caving in all the time? So let's have coercion in the right direction instead of social engineering.
And Bruce, it's actually even more than just free speech, because there was only one arrest when these rioters were doing their damage to the college. Authorities were really seemed to just let the protesters do what they want, including, by the way, I think we can show there's one video of a woman who was being interviewed, and she got pepper sprayed right there, and she had a red hat on. It wasn't even a pro-Trump hat, by the way, but she was. Doesn't something have to be done if local authorities aren't going to do it?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, some of that stuff is definitely over the top, but Donald's response appears as though he's against democracies this week when he's saying, I mean, these people, if they want to protest peacefully, that's fine, and that's our democratic tradition, but his response is that we're going to strip federal funding. He looks like he's against democracies when he's also attacking our democratic allies in Australia and Mexico in the same week and continuing to cuddle up to Putin.
But, Mike, democracies allow freedom of speech, and they don't allow rioters to get away with this stuff. By the way, Thursday night, there was another one on the other coast at NYU, New York University, in which a speaker was not allowed. He tried to give a speech, but he had to leave in the middle of it because of what happened there.
You're absolutely right, David. And what we saw at Berkeley, not the rioting, but also we had teachers going against students expressing their viewpoints in high school, even students that were pro-Trump were getting bashed by teachers in high school. This is widespread. And really, education is supposed to be about hearing different opinions. This guy was invited to Berkeley by the school, and the school did nothing to combat this protest. So this is really atrocious, and I'm really glad to see finally somebody like President Trump sticking up for free speech.
And Emac, a lot of our tax money goes into these just the public universities alone get $37 billion. Shouldn't taxpayers have some say in how that money's spent?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and yes, I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't think Donald Trump should be in the business of picking and choosing which universities get federal money. I'm with Bruce to some degree. It feels like a suppression of free speech. The point needs to be made, and it's an important one. We got to talk about it. Mike brought it up. Berkeley is saying we are about free speech. That's why we invited Milo in the first place. That's our founding principles, is about the full spectrum of opinion. What happened here was 150 anarchists from the outside in black hoods and masks came in and started committing the violence. Yes, students may have participated. I think they did. Maybe teachers too. But Berkeley is saying we are about free speech.
Well, what gets me is the hypocrisy, because apparently it's okay for President Obama to deny federal funding when certain colleges and even elementary schools don't have transgender bathrooms. That's okay for him to pull money then. But when President Obama says maybe I should pull money because there's no freedom of speech laws, somehow that's terrible. That's evil.
I know, David, usually I'm on your side on this one, but I'm a little bit more with Emac. First of all, I think that it's been a little misleading who is, causing the damage. I think that there was a very peaceful protest among students, and as they have the right to do. And I think sort of, rather than sort of bullying the colleges, I would do sort of more of a JFK stance, which was to go to these universities and say, you know what, I think you guys are grown-ups. I think we can have important speeches here. And if you treat these college students like grown-ups, and I've spoken at many college campuses where they're extremely welcoming, I think we'll see better behavior. I think bullying and sort of coming down to their level isn't necessarily the way to handle this.
But Steve, again, it's the hypocrisy. By the way, I said Obama. It was obviously President Trump who's the one who's saying we should pull money from where these riots are going on. And if a lot of people said it was okay for President Obama to do that when they didn't do things he liked, but now it's totally different with President Trump.
Yeah, I think the principle should be very basic. Universities should be bastions of the First Amendment, not restricting speech in any form in any way. And Liz is right about Berkeley. There were about 150 outside agitators who came in and tried to create the riot that was created. But you saw at NYU, you saw at some other campuses, disruptors from the student body come in and try to shut speakers down. It should be very clear. Respectful, peaceful protests, fine. But physically stopping a speaker, no way.
Right. Okay. By the way, Bruce, were you against President Obama threatening to pull funds from schools that weren't doing the right thing on transgender bathrooms, according to him?
Well, I think that had to deal with a law or a legal precedent here.
Well, isn't freedom of speech a law as well? It's codified in our Constitution.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. On this Breitbart editor, nobody even knew who he was before this.
I guess
and
the
now
answer is no, you weren't against President Obama doing the same, right?
I was not against President Obama, no.
Neither
Okay, so
am I.
but let me
That's a
just
civil
say,
rights
nobody should feel sorry for this Breitbart editor. He's going to get to double his speaking fee, and then he's going to get armed guards, and they should invite him back, and it'll probably cost him more. So nobody should feel sorry for him.
But the point is, Mike, it is a civil rights issue. Freedom of speech is it's one of our basic civil rights, is it not?
According to the Constitution, at least as I know it is, David. And again, I think the big issue here is that it's not what the speaking fees that this guy was going to get, and they may double, and exactly even how violent the protest was at this university. It's in general, there's been a put down of freedom of speech and discourse in colleges, on high schools, even grade schools. I've heard about it, and that's so important. Discourse is so important to the education process.
It has, EMAC, it has happened before. I mean, we have been here before, and not surprisingly, at University of Berkeley. I mean, back in the 60s and the 70s, when Ronald Reagan was governor of University of Berkeley, he stood down a lot of the writing that was going on there.
One person was shot and killed there, so I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think that's a reaction. It's about suppression. I just don't know how you stop the rioting. The rioting is wrong. It's not good. There should be peaceful protests. We can all support that. That's about the First Amendment and free speech. But the civil rights issue with the transgenders, that's a law. This is something else that's going on. And by the way, we're not preparing our students for the free market and the business world when they don't hear the full range and spectrum of opinions, which was Berkeley was trying to do.
But EMAC, and I know you're against this, but I'm pushing back because I'm a taxpayer, and I didn't realize $37 billion went to public universities. A lot of extra money goes to private universities. I think, Sabrina, I think that we have a right to decide some of which what happens to that money, and maybe Trump should decide that if they're not sanctifying our freedom of speech.
Sure, David, but I think one reason that we're seeing so much money go into the public universities is because the government is in the business of the student loans, as we've talked about a lot on this show. And I think ultimately the people that would be hurt from pulling federal funds are students who are receiving those loans. So I think we have to be careful. I am with you. I can't stand when I hear that my own kids' classrooms are being politicized. I think that, but I do think we need to elevate the conversation with these students. We need to force them to say,
but
hey,
Steve,
you
it's
have an open
our
mind.
money. It's our money. Don't we have a right to decide how it's spent?
Absolutely, and our money going to support the First Amendment, no more speech codes and suppression of speech. Let's have it all out there in the marketplace peacefully, respectfully. That's the essence of democracy in a republic. Let's enforce it.
By the way, eventually Steve is going to recover. He is recovering well, but we mention again because he's very careful about the way he looks. He hurt his shoulder. That's why he doesn't have a coat on today. We wish him best. Coming up, a Supreme Court showdown that some here say could end up smacking down U.S. workers. We'll explain coming next.
If we end up with that gridlock, I would say, if you can, Mitch, go nuclear, because that would be an absolute shame if a man of this quality was caught up in the web.
President Trump saying Republicans should use the so-called nuclear option if Democrats try to filibuster his pick for Supreme Court justice. And Mike, you say they should because Neil Gorsuch would be good for businesses and workers. How so?
Absolutely, David. Gorsuch is somebody who believes strictly in the Constitution, would rule by the Constitution, would not legislate up there on the bench. This will help business. It'll rein in government. It'll keep regulations down to a minimum. In fact, if we had had somebody like Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, more like him, I don't think Obamacare would have ever passed.
Ooh, Bruce, what do you think?
Well, I don't know about that because Justice Roberts was the deciding vote. But sure, he's going to be good for business because his record is that he has sided with corporate power over individual rights. The wild card here, and listen, I'm sure this guy is a decent guy. My problem is that, you know, there's a lot of anger in Washington over how Judge Merrick was treated. He didn't even get a hearing. I believe Democrats will give him a hearing, but whether he gets to 60 votes, who knows?
All right. Well, we should be clear, Sabrina, that Gorsuch doesn't necessarily need 60 votes. Sam Alito became justice without 60 votes. So did Clarence Thomas. It's only needed if there is a filibuster. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, David, you're right about that in terms of the procedure. And I'm actually very encouraged by Gorsuch, and I think he would be great for economic growth and job creation. And one of the reasons is that we have this huge problem of our administrative state here. Congress writes these very vague laws, throws it to the administrative state to handle. They read between the laws, and then it ends up in the courts. And we need someone on the court who's going to say, you know what, we need to rein this in. We need to make sure that businesses have some certainty so that they can plan and thrive. And I think that that's what we will get with Justice Gorsuch.
Now, Steve, I misspoke a little because if there is a filibuster, there is the so-called Harry Reid nuclear option. Harry Reid's the one that started it back when President Obama was in power. That would allow, even if there's a filibuster, the filibuster to be cut with a simple majority. Do you think that'll happen? That's what Trump wants.
Well, he only wants it if the filibuster is going to succeed. Filibusters have been mounted in the past against justices, but they didn't get the necessary votes.
Well, do you
to
think
make it
Democrats
stick.
are going to try to organize one?
They'll try to organize it, certainly to appease their base. But this guy, you know, they want to preserve the filibuster. I think the Democrats, if you get a justice on the liberal side who is replaced, they don't want a conservative coming on. So I think they're going to be very careful on this. And in terms of Gorsuch, since he's so good, I think you can peel off 8 or 9 Democrats if necessary to override a filibuster. But in the past, up to 25 senators have tried to mount a filibuster and it didn't work. So I don't think you need to use the so-called nuclear option. But if they do, they will. And the Democrats will rue the day they did it.
Okay, well, Emac, let's get back to the sort of things that if he does become a Supreme Court justice, he's going to be looking at. There are a number of cases involving companies, some of whom are fighting against regulatory overuse, they would say, whether it's the EPA or others. Others going against, there's Kraft Food, there's the National Association of Manufacturers, there's Microsoft, some of them going against frivolous lawsuits. There are a lot of business issues going to be decided.
Yeah, it's a good point. And by the way, just a footnote, Obama's Supreme Court picks, Elena Kagan and Sotomayor, had a simple majority vote. That's what they got in, what they faced. They got in with about 60 plus votes, but they got the easier standard. So yes, you're right. And here's what Gorsuch has been all about, according to the rulings he's rendered. It's the people first, not the government first, not bureaucrats first. So what happens is under Obama is that small businesses and people have left to do the circus plate spinning act in front of judges because the bureaucrats are changing the rules on them all the time.
I saw Bruce grimacing when you were saying it's in favor of the individual. Bruce, can't you be in favor of the individual and in favor of a company?
Well, sure. I'll be in favor of one thing. He might be also, if you talk about him in favor of businesses and corporate power, getting back to what Sabrina said, he also is not wild about the use of he wants things to come from the legislative arena rather than the executive branch. And given Donald's propensity to put out executive orders and cause flights to be delayed around the world, I think that he might rein that in as well.
But, Mike, the main thing is there has been too much legislating from the courts. That is, judges and justices deciding from the courts something that should be in the hands of voters, right?
Right, and the hard part about that for business, David, is it's like, imagine a company driving down a highway and the speed limit changes every quarter of a mile. You can't plan, you can't invest, you don't know what the future is going to lie with an activist bench. So this is very important for business.
And Steve, it's the rule of law. Unless, as Mike was saying, unless you have clear rules of law and judges and justices that administer clear rules of law, things get crazy. Nobody knows what's right.
That's right. And the language is so vague that bureaucrats can decide what the language means. And to put it in perspective, Sabrina's point, Congress passes a little over 100 laws a year. The regulatory agencies, the equivalent of 3,000 to 4,000 a year.
Woo. Wow, we need change. All right, the Cash It In gang getting ready to roll at the bottom of the hour. Eric, what do you got?
Hey, David, more boycotts called against companies backing President Trump and bashing President Trump. But should innocent workers be punished over partisan politics? Plus, our commander-in-chief tweeting even more now that he's in the White House. Is that the best way to get his message directly to the people? See you at 11:30.
All right, Eric, thanks. We'll be watching. But up here first, Democrats warning that President Trump's budget director is on the record saying we should cut Social Security. But as my own family just found out, Social Security already is getting cut thanks to a bill President Obama signed. What your family needs to know coming next. Well, you hear it all the time in D.C., scare tactics over potential cuts in Social Security benefits. But did you know cuts in Social Security checks already are happening. It's a part of a bipartisan plan to fix Medicare payments to doctors during the Obama administration. Well, my family just found this out the hard way. Steve, this just got personal. My folks called me up there, they're my lovely folks, and said, look, we got $500 a month less in our Social Security checks, and that's not supposed to be cut into. Apparently, in order to do the doc fix, the government decided it's okay to dock Social Security checks. That doesn't seem right.
It isn't right, and the contract with Social Security between the American people, this is not a welfare program. You're paying into it all your working life to get certain benefits promised when you retire. And to cheat people like that, it's like a company saying, oh, we owe you a certain amount of money for your annuity, but we think your income is too high, so we're going to keep it. Absolutely wrong. Yeah. And one thing to keep in mind about Social Security during your lifetime, let's say they take out $3,000 a year to pay for your Social Security account, that $3,000 is taxed by the federal government and often by state governments. Yeah. So you don't get the money, but you pay the tax on it. Then when you retire, they gratuitously cut the benefit. Absolutely wrong. You go to jail in the private sector, by
Bruce,
the way.
we should mention, by the way, this was President Obama signed it, but it was bipartisan. Republicans agreed to do this doc fix, too.
They did. Now, here's the deal, and people should pay close attention. David, it was a very good article, and they should pay close attention because more of this may happen, because what the doc fix was designed to do, and it will do, is that it ties doctor pay, their Medicare reimbursement, to quality measures. Understood. So they're not getting paid. So if they're not getting paid,
EMAC,
whether something's better.
There's always an excuse for these things. I understand that. Bruce makes a good point, but we get, even before we're retired, we get these account statements every year saying this is how much money you get when you retire. It doesn't say you may lose some of that money because of the doc fix.
I don't see. I have to check the fine print on that. I don't think it's even there. No. And so this is a truth in advertising fraud issue. Sorry to be so ham-handed with that word, but the government goes after all sorts of companies on those issues, and it looks like you guys got rooked here.
We did. Now, there's 61 million people that get Social Security checks, Mike, so it's just a small fraction of that number, but still, it's a promise. It's a promise that was made by the government. This is your money. You get it back when you retire.
Yeah, I don't care if it's just one person, David. I mean, this is a contract signed with the public. And, you know, it just goes to, for years, the government takes money out of Social Security account to make the budget deficit look lower. It's all, in my opinion, a scam. Why Social Security must be privatized.
Sabrina, sorry to do it. You got to button this up in 20 seconds for us. Go ahead.
Well, it's a promise, as Mike points out, but it's a forced promise. It's not like you have the option to opt out of Social Security. It's mandatory that you contribute your whole life. So any kind of changes, whether it's means testing or cutting benefits that we might need to do to make this program solvent, have to be done well in advance of retirement so that people can make alternative changes.
One would think, but so much for that lockbox. All right, thank you, gang. And we are back with our Informer's Super Bowl picks. EMAC, Microsoft. What do you like
Wall Streeters like it for its cloud business and sweet dividend.
What do you think, Mike?
I think timing for the Super Bowl is great with Microsoft, David. They got the new digital memorabilia. They just kicked it off with Russell Wilson of the Seahawks.
All right, quick Twitter.
I think more people are going to be tweeting than ever before during the Super Bowl, especially for Lady Gaga.
Not so sure. You may want to buy it only if it goes down. It's going to get sold.
That's it for Forbes on Fox. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful Super Bowl weekend. Keep it right here. Number one business spot continues with Eric Bolling and Cashing In.
Company executives speaking out for or against our commander-in-chief. Better watch out. New calls this week to boycott Starbucks after its CEO pledged to hire 10,000 refugees in wake of President Trump's temporary travel ban from terror hotspots. And some Tesla customers said to be canceling orders because its CEO will serve on one of the president's business councils. Is it time for both sides of the political spectrum to relax so innocent workers at these companies don't get hurt? Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling. Welcome to Cashing In. Our Cashing In crew this week: Mercedes Slapp, Lisa Booth, Rachel Campo-Stuffy, and Richard Fowler. Welcome, everybody. Now, Mercedes, what do you think about these calls for boycotts on both sides of the spectrum?
You know, I think that these political boycotts will pretty much fall flat. We've seen this in the past where boycotts are really only effective when you have a lot of media attention placed on these companies. You have seen in cases, for example, where like 55 out of 144 companies have conceded to their customers when there's a change. But when it comes to these political boycotts, it's very different than a traditional boycott. What's becoming so strange, Eric, is the fact that you have these CEOs of these companies coming out and really being outright political, stating their opinions instead of really just focusing on what products they want to sell. And for customers, it's a turnoff. They want to just say, you know what, I like my latte, I want to buy it and move forward on it. So
Right.
I really find that it's very short-lived, these political
Now,
boycotts.
let's talk to someone who may be boycotting one of these companies himself, Mr. Richard Fowler. What's this, Fowler? You're going to cancel your Tesla order?
Well, I was thinking about buying a Tesla, Eric, but now that they're on this board, I'm reconsidering it. But here's the truth. I think I agree with Mercedes.
Why?
Because here's the thing. I have major problems with Donald Trump, and any businessman that will support him, I think, is moving the country in the wrong direction. But I have to agree with Mercedes. I think many of these boycotts, just because I choose not to buy a Tesla, right, they fall flat, right? Because how long can you sustain it? How long will it continue? Mercedes has to get her latte, so how long is she gonna wait?
Now talk to me a little bit about what Mercedes brought up, where these CEOs are becoming very political. For example, Schultz at Starbucks says, we're going to hire 10,000 refugees. Now, on face value, you say, okay, I understand where he's going with this, but there are a lot of unemployed Americans, and there are a lot of unemployed vets in America. Maybe you should think about hiring them first.
Well, here's the thing. I think Starbucks, I'm pretty sure they hire vets and they hire a lot of folks. There's a Starbucks popping up on every corner all across the country. But here's the thing. These CEOs could do what they want to do, and it's up to the consumer on how they choose to spend their money. If they don't want Starbucks to hire refugees, then you got to affect Starbucks' pocketbook. If you don't want Tesla to support Donald Trump, then you got to affect Tesla's pocketbook. That's how this has always worked. That's how boycotts have always worked. That's how they'll continue to work.
No doubt. Go ahead, Lisa. By the way, for the record, I can't stand boycotts. I just hate the idea of a boycott.
The good news is there's much better places to get coffee than Starbucks, which is thankfully.
Yeah, where?
Pete's, including McDonald's. To Richard, anywhere really. Name the place really. Their coffee is not very good.
The Black Rifle Coffee Company is hiring 10,000 veterans actually.
Name that again?
The Black Rifle Coffee Company is hiring 10,000 veterans.
And there you have it, folks.
This is a better idea. Rather than boycotting a company, point out companies that are doing things actively that you like them and get behind them.
To Richard's point, though, wouldn't you want Tesla to be involved in shaping the economic policies of the country? Because wouldn't that ultimately end up benefiting your business if we have better business practices and getting regulations out of the way to allow the economy to boom? But in regards to the actual, boycotts, we do see sometimes it works. For instance, with Target, it worked. Their sales actually dropped 7.2%. They lost, I think, $20 million in revenue. We've also seen it backfire in the instance of Chick-fil-A, for instance, with the attention that they got. Their sales actually increased because you have to know their customer base. And what individuals were in uproar over was actually in contradiction to what a lot of Chick-fil-A customers believe. So, it really just depends on the boycott.
Let's get Rachel. Let's get Rachel in here. Rachel, how about just putting up the best product you possibly can and keep the politics out of your product?
Well, obviously that's a great idea, but I have to say I believe in boycotts when the company is investing in something that you're very morally opposed to. So Starbucks, for example, does give money to Planned Parenthood, who performs over 300,000 abortions a year. I don't buy Starbucks. I go to McDonald's. That said, are the liberals going to boycott companies because their CEOs simply talk to the president? Because Boeing has, so has Ford, Tesla, Apple. So are they going to throw away their phones? Are they going to stop flying? Are they going to stop driving? It gets really silly. And by the way, conservatives didn't boycott Walmart when they dealt with Michelle Obama on her health initiatives. This is getting silly. We're a country. This is our president. Get over it, and let's move the country forward.
Yeah, Richard.
Well, wait a minute. First, I would argue that this ideal of us getting, Democrats need to get over the fact that Donald Trump is president is ridiculous. Republicans never got over the fact for 8 years that Barack Obama was president. They obstructed him every step they could.
True.
But
we're not
that
going
is
out
true.
doing paid protests every day.
That is true.
And we didn't boycott
these are not paid protests.
These are not paid protests. Come on, Richard.
We didn't
protest his inauguration. You guys shut the government down for 19 days, Mercedes. 19 days you shut the government down.
Can I
hurting the American people.
Hold on, bring in Lisa. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, also, Richard, you have literally sitting members of Congress saying that the President of the United States is not legitimate. That is incredibly extreme. And since the day that President Trump won, we've had the left and the mainstream media try to basically delegitimize him. Look, you guys do you understand the precedent that is being set when the left calls for electors to defect or calling for the abolishment of the Electoral College. That is so dangerous to the system at large.
You know what's dangerous? Ted Cruz shutting down the government for 19 days. You know what's also dangerous? A member of Congress saying to the president of the United States.
We're getting off topic here. I'm going to bring this back to topic. Let me go with Mercedes.
I'll say this, Eric.
Guys, hold on, please. Mercy, just hear me out. President Trump has also met with union leaders and had a very positive response from union leaders, and I didn't hear conservatives getting all crazy about that.
Well, I think.
Well, conservatives are happy about that because.
Guys, Mercedes.
I think President Trump is making the effort to reach out to both sides, the corporation side, the union leaders. His focus is on the American worker. When you look at these boycotts, these political boycotts could impact these workers that are working for these corporations. And I think that what these CEOs need to do is keep the politics out of it. Customers just want to go and buy their product if that's what they want. When they start putting in their own moralistic approach, I think it really is negative. I mean, it sends a very negative message to consumers in America.
Let's bring in Rachel. Rachel, your thoughts on President Trump meeting with the union leaders and coming out with a very positive response from them?
Yeah, they came out and they said it was incredible, quote unquote. And I think that Democrats are going to be nervous about that because we've already peeled away about 100,000 Democrats who switched tickets in this election. And if he triangulates with the unions, that's going to spell more trouble for Democrats. Look, I think Mercedes makes a great point. We need to get back to the business of America, which is business. And that said, I will say this, Eric, the fun boycott, it wasn't really a boycott, it was a fun prank that conservatives played on the snowflake baristas in Starbucks was quite funny when they kept saying that their names were Trump. So then when their coffees came up, they had to say Trump, and the snowflake baristas were, traumatized and needed a therapy after that. So I think, fun things like that I'm for, but let's not do things that hurt the American worker.
Let me get Richard in here. Richard, so your thought now, you want to boycott the people that are meeting with President Trump. Does that include, well, it sounds like exactly what you had just said.
Not what I
you were
said
going to go visit Starbucks and you were going to boycott your purchase of a Tesla.
Let's be very clear.
Okay.
The building trades who went to meet with the president last week, and the reason why they're excited with this president is because he voted against, or he said he was going to withdraw us from the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. I agree with that. I think the TPP was an awful thing. There's a lot of Republicans, including some on this show, who agree that the TPP is a great thing. So I think we have to be very careful here.
You're back in that rabbit hole again. You said you were thinking about not buying your Tesla because Elon Musk met with the president. But are you going to go and have that same amount of animosity towards the union leaders that met with the president?
No, listen, the problem I have with Elon Musk is his supporting the president, just like Rachel's problem with Starbucks
and
is Planned Parenthood, which is why they don't go.
And so are your beloved unions, Richard.
The unions are praising the president for the fact that he pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership.
No, it's not just TPP, though. It's also the Keystone Pipeline. You've got private sector unions. It's also the Keystone Pipeline.
And infrastructure spending.
It's also the fact of the policies that are going to help rebuild the economy. Richard.
Mind you, this president has not met with any public sector unions. He hasn't sat down with the teachers who are trying to get America together. The teachers are the ones that are saying Betsy DeVos is unqualified to be the education
trash a business leader for meeting with the president and then go ahead and hold your beloved unions up on a pedestal for meeting with the same president. That's all I got to leave it there. We have a lot more show coming up. President Trump making politicians and gang leaders in Chicago an offer they can't refuse. Stop the violence or else.
If they're not going to solve the problem, and what you're doing is the right thing, then we're going to solve the problem for them.
I was recently contacted by some of the top gang thugs in Chicago for a sit-down. They reached out to me because they associated me with you. They respect you. They believe in what you're doing. And they want to have a sit-down about lowering that body count.
If they're not going to solve the problem, and what you're doing is the right thing, then we're going to solve the problem for them, because we're going to have to do something about Chicago. Because what's happening in Chicago should not be happening in this country.
President Trump reiterating his commitment to ending the carnage in my hometown of Chicago during a meeting with African-American leaders this week. He says if Chicago can't do it, he'll send in the federal government. Now, at least if Chicago can't fix it, should Trump send in the feds to fix it? And by the way, money, FBI, National Guard, what level?
Well, I think what's important here is that Mayor Rahm Emanuel has said that he welcomes federal involvement. I think that the federal government should limit its involvement in various things, but I think it's important to mention that Rahm Emanuel has said that he welcomes the support. But I also think it's important to mention, the fact that Mayor Rahm Emanuel has recently acknowledged that the Ferguson effect is real. And what have we seen over the course of the past year? We've seen a 56% increase in police officer deaths killed in the line of duty. We've also seen a 167% increase in the ambush-style police killings as well. And so I think that is very important, because how are you supposed to stop this crime if police officers feel like they can't do their jobs?
And Rachel, I think Bill O'Reilly had mentioned that he would recommend the National Guard coming in on corners, hot corners where a lot of murders are occurring. Rahm Emanuel says send in some feds. Your thought of Donald Trump sending some support to Chicago?
Well, if he's invited by Rahm Emanuel. But look, the crime problem, and you're from Chicago, Eric, the crime problem at its root is really a family problem, is really a spiritual problem. And there's nothing that Donald Trump or the feds can do about that. I think what's interesting here is this is an opportunity for President Donald Trump to engage citizen Barack Obama, who right now is sitting on an island with Richard Branson and should probably get off that island and come over to his hometown and start doing the work he never did in his administration to help black families and inner city youth. The plight in the inner city has been a wasted opportunity for over the last 8 years with an African-American president who really could have done a lot more. This is a chance for Donald Trump to engage him. And let's get to the root of the problem, which is family breakdown and spiritual breakdown.
Richard, what about this? I'm Pastor Darrell Scott. I mean, I want to believe this is going on. I want to believe gang leaders contacted Pastor Darrell Scott, and said, let's have a discussion. I'm not sure. Do you think it's for real?
I don't think that happened. But here's the thing. I agree with Rachel a little bit on this. I think President Obama could have done more in America's inner cities. There's no question about that. But you can't just talk about, police and families aren't the only problems in the inner city. You have to think about why the families are broken up to begin with. Both Democrats and Republicans agree that we need some sort of criminal justice reform. The reason why many of these families are broken up is because mom or dad happened to be incarcerated for a silly drug crime.
That's why the crime is? That's why the crime, because dad's in jail? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly. Well, Rachel is saying there's a breakdown in the family. She is correct. The reason why the family is broken down is because a lot of people are going to...
But I don't agree with your analysis of why it happened. I think the government has a lot to do with it. I think lack of economic opportunity...
Yeah, you're right. The government does have a lot to do with it.
And other problems that have been entrenched and perpetuated.
Those are all platitudes.
Guys, you're both talking at the same time. We can't hear you. Rachel, finish the thought. Richard will give you a thought, and I get Mercy and go. Rachel.
I just don't agree with his analysis of why there's family breakdown. A lot of it has to do with lack of economic opportunity that comes from...
Fair enough. Fair enough. Richard, quick thought.
Government is the problem here, Eric. Government is the problem. The reason why government is the problem is because we have ridiculous drug laws that put people in jail for longer than they need to be, and they're being taken away from their family.
I need Mercy's ideas here. Your thoughts,
here's
Mercy.
the deal. President Trump wants to be a fixer. It's just how he functions. He believes by sending in the feds it would work to try to solve this problem in Chicago. That is obviously not going to be enough. You can send federal resources, which is what Mayor Emanuel has said, just send them in, but it is going to be about integrating the local law enforcement with some federal help, with social programs in the inner cities. Remember, these are areas with very high poverty rates, low education achievement rates, so it is more of a fundamental problem than just sending in the feds.
I gotta go. Coming up, Donald Trump taking to Twitter even more now that he's President Trump. Is that the best way to get his message across, an agenda to the American people? President Trump tweeting even more now that he's in the White House. Some critics say it's unbecoming of a leader, but he says it's the best way to communicate directly to the citizens. Now, Rachel, personally, I love this idea. Your thoughts?
I love it too. And everyone that tells them to put the Twitter down, I think they're wrong and they have an ulterior motive. He is fundamentally transforming the relationship between citizen and their leader. He's making it more transparent. And by the way, the media needs to take a look at itself. If they don't like all the tweeting, they'll need to look at how unhinged and unfair they've been in their reporting, because the more they are, the more likely he is to want to go over their heads.
Mercedes, right to the people, 40, 50 million people direct.
That's right. FDR had the fireside chats, and Donald Trump has Twitter. And I think it's an effective way of reaching directly to the American people. This is where you see the authentic Donald Trump, whether you like it or not.
And your thoughts, Lisa?
I think it's great. Look, they're changing the game the way the White House communicates, whether it's calling on different reporters and changing up the order at the White House press briefings, also introducing the Skype reporters as well. It's all positive, in my opinion.
Richard, I absolutely adore this. It makes the left heads explode when he's tweeting about it, all sorts of things. Your thoughts on the POTUS as a Twitter handle?
I have no problem with POTUS tweeting. My problem is when he tweets out policy. A lot of times policy can't be defined or brought out in 140 characters. We saw that this past weekend with the quote-unquote Muslim ban. It wasn't implemented correctly.
Not
He's
a
on
Muslim
Twitter.
ban.
It is a Muslim ban, but I digress.
It's not a Muslim ban.
It's a Muslim ban. When 100% of the people, when 100% of the people
we can
caught
put that in
in the
140
ban,
characters. No, it's not.
it's definitely a Muslim ban. You guys, I mean, you guys, the response that you're hearing from the people here proves my point.
I only have a few seconds, but for the record,
didn't read the tweet well.
I read every word of the 13-page actual executive order.
But the American
never
people.
Once does he mention a Muslim
Anyways,
ban.
Richard, why don't you tweet it out?
God mercy.
We'll just be
I will tweet hashtag Muslim ban because that's what it is.
Well, you'll be tweeting inaccurately. Listen, I think it's great. Here's my 2 cents very quickly. 30, 40, 50 million people get it, even if they don't have cable news or don't have a television. They can see exactly what the president's thinking. I actually love this idea. What? Go ahead, Richard. Quick.
Well, listen, there's a lot of folks who don't have internet, so maybe the president should work on that.
All right, we'll work on that. Wi-Fi, national Wi-Fi. Coming up, who needs actors when we have politicians? We reveal who should win the Oscar for Best Performance this year. All right, I want to say thanks to our Cashman crew for joining us. Great week, everybody. Okay, time to wake up, America. The 89th Academy Awards are just a couple of weeks away, and we already have some contenders based on some very powerful performances this week. For Best Supporting Actress in a Musical, ladies and gentlemen, Democrat House Leader Nancy Pelosi.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't unhear that. La La Land's Emma Stone should be okay. And for Best Performance by an Actor in a Drama, Democrat Senate Leader Charles Schumer.
This executive order was mean-spirited, un-American.
Oh, wow. Powerful, emotional. Look out, Denzel, Ryan, and Ben Affleck's brother. He actually looked like he was about to cry. Great acting, Chuck. I'm sure you dug deep for that motivation. Bottom line is these liberals are in panic mode. They don't know what to do with President Trump. Protest, deploy scare tactics, cry on cue. Performance art, all of it, Academy Award-worthy performances, you know? They remind me of that guy in high school and the pretty girl who liked him for a week and then didn't like him anymore. He made a fool out of himself trying to get her back. That's where the Dems are right now. That high school guy crying, singing, and saying crazy things to get the girl back. I got news for you, Dems. She ain't coming back, and you got 4 years to think about her. Hopefully 8. So get off your knees, liberals. You look ridiculous. And have a great Super Bowl weekend, everybody.